Because string processing is so common in programs, it's used everywhere, whether you're storing information about items that you want to purchase online, or whether you're storing account numbers or passwords or somebody's name or information about somebody's grades on a transcript. All of that is character-based data. And so processing characters within a program as strings is really, really common. And Python realizes this and provides lots of helpful functions that we can use whenever we're processing string information in our program. Let's check out some of the helpful tools that Python provides. One thing Python allows us to do is access individual characters within a string. Sometimes you want to consider the value of a whole string, like in the password example above, but sometimes you might just want to look at a particular part of the string or a single character. Remember that Python stores a string as a list of characters, so the computer can figure out which character is stored in each individual position within that list. When it stores a string, it stores the collection of individual characters next to each other. So for example, if we were storing the name Smith in Python, it would be storing those individual characters in adjacent boxes right next to each other in the computer's memory. The position of the very first box would be position number 0. Remember, Python always starts numbering the index at 0. And then it would increase the index for each adjacent item by 1. The M is at index 1, the I is at index 2, the T is at index 3, and the H is at index 4. So if we wanted to know what's the first character of the last name, we could use this syntax. What's the character at my string last name at position 0? In Python, we evaluate this expression on the right-hand side of the assignment operator, go to the last name variable and pull out the S, and then it would store that value, assign that value, capital S, to my variable called character. So if we printed out the value of character, it would print out an S. What if we wanted to print the character at position 2, the one in the middle of the list? How could we write that? We could write 2 steps. We could say character equals, and then last name at index 2, followed by a print statement. Print out the character. Or if we wanted to, we could just use a print statement to say print last name at index 2. In the second version, it wouldn't store the character from position 2 at anywhere. It wouldn't make a new variable and store the I inside it. It would just access that value within my list, that value at position 2, and then just immediately print it out to the screen. In general, if you want to access the character stored in a string at position X, you'd say whatever your identifier for your string is, and then square brackets with X, the position that you want to access in those square brackets. Another useful thing you can do in Python is access a range of character values within a string. Sometimes we call this slicing the string, meaning that we just take a piece of it so that we can use it in some kind of additional operation. In Python, we indicate the range of characters that we want to include within our slice by listing the first index that we want to include and then listing the index that's one larger than the last item that we want to include. So if we wanted to know what are the first 3 characters in last name, if we go up here, that's the SMI. We could say, give me the substring that starts at index 0 and ends before index 3. So remember, the last index included here is not going to be part of our slice. So when we say substring equals last name from index 0 to 3, the value of substring that it stores will be SMI. And because substring is also a string, it would really be storing these 3 characters in a new list where S is at index 0, M's at index 1, and I is at index 2. Another helpful string processing command is the length function. We can use that to find the length of a list. We can also use it to find the length of a string or the number of characters within a string. The general syntax for that is to use the len command with the identifier of our string variable in parentheses. That will return the number of characters within the string and store it in whatever variable you place on the left side of the assignment operator. So if, for example, if we were using our variable last name and it stores Smith, and we said number of characters equals len last name, what would the number of characters be equal to after we execute this command? It would be equal to 5 because the last name Smith has 5 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this point, let's test out our knowledge of all these string operations that we've seen so far with a programming challenge. Suppose we want to write a program that reads in quiz score values and then prints a message based on the value of the score. If the score is 6 or higher, we want to print a message saying the student passed the quiz. If the quiz score is less than 6, we want to print a message saying better luck next time. And we want the program to ask for quiz scores and print the messages for multiple students in our course. We're not sure how many students there are in the course, so after each score, we'll ask if there are more scores to enter. If the user responds with any strings that begin with a Y, we'll get another score and print out the message. If the user ever responds with a string that doesn't begin with a Y, then we'll quit our program. Take a few minutes, pause the video, see if you can work out an IPO chart and a Python solution for this problem. This particular problem uses a lot of the things that we've talked about so far this semester. So it uses strings. It also uses input, output, and a conditional statement and a repetition statement. So we're getting a lot of the items that we've seen so far in the semester all in one single example. So first, let's think about what kind of information this program accepts as input. Well, we know we want to enter the value of the quiz scores, and we're also going to have to enter whether we want to continue entering scores or not. So we'll say that we need to enter quiz score values, and we're also going to enter our choice, Y or N, to continue or stop. What kind of output are we going to have for this program? Well, some of the output is going to be related to the scores themselves. So we'll be printing messages either saying the student passed or better luck next time. Now let's think about the processing column. Probably want to welcome the user and tell them what the purpose of this program is. And then we know that we want to start processing individual quiz scores. So we're going to have a repetition statement. We're going to repeat until the user says, no, I don't have any more quiz scores to enter. So I want to repeat while they say yes. And then what do I want to repeat? I want to ask the user for a score. Then I want to use my conditional statement to say, if the score is greater than or equal to 6, then I want to print my passed message. Otherwise, I want to print my better luck next time. And then finally, I need to include my update step for my loop. That is where I will ask them if they want to enter another score. I'm going to prompt them for a new choice that's either a Y or an N value. I think I have a really good start in my processing column. I usually like to check to make sure that I included all of the individual components for my loop. Remember that in a loop, we're going to need 4 pieces. We need an initialization step, a loop condition, the loop body, and included in the loop body, we need an update step. That's the final component. So we definitely have the loop condition in here. We want to keep going while the response is Y. We have the loop body where we want to process the score. We have the update step where we ask for a new choice, but we skipped over the initialization step. Anytime we're using user input, the initialization step allows us to get the initial response from the user. So I need to add an initialization step where I prompt them to enter their very first yes or no choice. That looks fantastic. Now let's try writing that in Python. I'm going to move it over so I can see my processing column really well. So my first step was welcoming the user. Score program, like that. And now I want to prompt my user to enter their very first choice, yes or no, and I want to read that in as input. So I'm going to need to use an input command to collect that string of data. I'm going to call it choice. I'm going to prompt them, enter a yes if you want to continue or an N if you want to quit. And now I'm going to use a while condition. I want to see whether the response that they entered, that's called choice. I want to know, is that equal to, or does it have a first character that starts with Y? Which one did it say in our description? User responds with any string that begins with a Y will get another quiz score. All right, so that was like a little flaw in my IPO chart where I was thinking I could just put, does the choice equal Y? Let's put that in there just to see how it works. Then we can update it later if we need to. After we start the loop, we want to first prompt the user to enter a new quiz score. And that's going to be a numeric value. I'm going to say it's an integer. And then if my quiz score is greater than or equal to 6, I want to print out my message saying student passed. And then otherwise, if it's not greater than 6, I want to print the other message saying better luck next time. Excellent. And then my final step in my loop body, I need to do the update step where I prompt for the next choice. Let's print a message at the end saying thanks for using the software. All right. So I'm going to test this out. So it asks me to enter a Y or a N to quit. So I can type in Y and then have a quiz score like 9. And it tells me the student passed. Do you want to enter another score or N to quit? Say Y again. So they got a 7. It says they passed again. Say Y. If we say somebody got a 2, it'll print better luck next time. Excellent. Let's say we enter a yes. Instead of continuing, see how the program stops and says, thanks for using the software? That's because yes is not an exact match for our string Y that we tested for in our while loop. And so remember in the original project description, it said that we wanted to continue if the user entered anything that started with a Y. So we need to think of how would we change this so that instead of checking to see does the whole choice equal Y exactly, does just the first character in the choice equal Y? So we could add that in by using the square brackets along with the index 0. That means look at the very first character in our string choice and see if it's equal to a Y. Let's test that out and see how that behaves differently. So if we enter a Y, it does exactly the same thing that it did before. But now if I type in yes, it still asks me to enter a quiz score. So it allows me to continue. And it will do that for any input that I give it that starts with a Y. And for any score that I enter that's less than 6, it'll print the better luck next time message. And for any quiz scores that I enter that are bigger than 6 or equal to 6, it'll print that they passed. Now the program only stops if I enter something that doesn't start with a Y. So if I enter no or anything else that doesn't start with a capital Y, it'll say, thanks for using this software.